So again, Q&A segment. For those that don't know, we answer the listeners' questions. We hit the streets of Atlanta with some of you guys' questions. This week when we go out this weekend, we'll do some questions that we had for the past couple weeks, and we'll go out and see what the people think about it. But if you have a question you want to send it to socialjunkiepod@gmail.com. We don't read your name, we just say your gender. I think this week we don't even know what this person's gender is because they only put a first letter for their first name and then their last name. But again, socialjunkiepod@gmail.com. If you have a question that you want to send, everyone that has sent a Q&A question, thank you. We really, really appreciate it. Everyone that's participated in the Q&A segment in the streets of Atlanta and not giving us a hard time, because nobody's really giving us a hard time.
Nobody has given us.
Thank you guys, man. I mean, we had like 2 no's maybe.
Yeah, but that's not really a hard time.
Nobody's giving us a hard time. Thank you, man, for everybody that's been participating. Like I said, we'll go back to the streets this weekend.
Yeah, we'll go back here and start sweating.
Yeah, it's gonna be fucking hot, bro. It's summertime, dog.
I'll have to bring
an umbrella. All right.
Cheers. Get my fucking soda.
All right. There's so much details on this shit. I don't know. We might be all over the place with this. But this is the question. I'm not gonna read the name of the gender because we don't know who this person is. But they asked, "Are you guys familiar with the Joe Budden podcast beef situation? I want to know your opinions on that if you do, since you both seem like close friends."
We not though. I don't even like this dude.
All right, so Joe Budden podcast. I started listening to that podcast maybe 2018 because I was watching Joe Budden, an academic show, that Everyday Struggle. That was a good show. That shit should have. They fucked that shit up. I like that show. Academics was on that dumb shit, but I like that show. I never liked Joe Budden like that. I was more into academics, honestly, dog. Which is weird to say that, but back then I was more into his takes back then, which is weird saying that now. But I transitioned over to Joe Budden, and then that whole situation happened where it was a whole blow up, and then he left, and then he had a podcast, and I was so mad that he left the show. I was like, I want to hear what he says about the shit on the podcast. So that's what turned me over to his podcast. So I've been listening to the podcast for like 3 years, and I stopped listening to it consistently, maybe like 6 months ago. Consistently, I stopped listening to it. But I don't have the fucking time on everything that happened, but it's the Joe Budden podcast with Rory and Mal. Mal's his close friend. Him and Mal have been friends for a long time. Rory, I think he met maybe some years before they started the podcast. I'm not 100% sure. And then there's another guy, Parks, who's Joe's engineer. He was Joe's, he used to go on tour with Joe. He'd be on the side and shit. So it's the 4 of them on the podcast, essentially. They talk hip-hop and shit. There's been situations behind the scenes, and of course we don't know all the details. We're just going off of what they're all saying. We don't know all the fucking details. But more recently, there was tension between Rory and Joe, where Joe felt like Rory was taking shots at him, and Rory said in their response, which we're gonna talk about later, that Joe would be bringing up personal shit on air that only him and Rory would talk about. So that would be that shit that would upset him to the point where he want to fight this nigga. So it got to the point where Joe felt like the episodes were getting bad because the tension was between him and Rory was so, he felt like the tension was high. But Mal said it was never to the point where them niggas was gonna fight each other. So Joe told Rory to take a couple podcasts off and don't come to the podcast. He texted the nigga that. Mal took offense to that because he said, "Joe, who the fuck are you to be fucking, to be telling this nigga not to come into the podcast?" Mal came in, I think he said on the podcast, he didn't start the shit, he came in episode 77. I think that's what he said. So Mal came in 77 episodes later. Rory, I think, came in episode 5. I was mistaken. It was just Joe and Melissa. Rory came in episode 5. He said this. Mal was upset at Joe because he said that shit to Rory. They didn't have episodes. Joe fucking got they other 2 homeboys. I think their name is Ish and I don't know the niggas' names, but 2 other niggas. Ice and Ish. What kind of names is that?
I'm pretty sure that's not their real names.
Ice Johnson. He had them 2 niggas on the show for a couple weeks. Mal didn't want to come back because he said he wasn't doing the shit without Rory, in a nutshell. They came back. They fucking said, and it was really awkward because I watched that episode, and I hadn't watched their episodes in a long time, and I watched that one because I was like, damn, these niggas breaking up, this some bullshit. And then they came back. Apparently, in the midst of all the shit happening between Rory and Joe, Joe told Mal in an argument that the podcast was none of his business. And that was Maul's biggest gripe with Joe. That nigga, I helped to build this shit. He said, I don't give a fuck that I came at episode 77 because I think they like 480 something episodes in now.
Yeah.
So that's like 400 plus episodes, which is a lot. Because we only on 88 and we do this shit every week. So thinking about that many episodes, 400 something, that's a lot of fucking episodes. Joe also said that he doesn't feel like he has to show respect to his friends. And Maul's biggest thing was, if you feel like that, okay, then that's just you. And you could tell Maul was just done because Joe said the podcast none of your business. They went back and forth with a whole bunch of other shit. These niggas left again. They left again. And apparently, I'm going to read all this shit. I'm not going to read everything. They left again. Joe fired Rory on the air, on the fucking podcast. He said, you're no longer welcome back. Rory's birthday was around that time too. It said Joe didn't tell Rory happy birthday. Joe says he loves and respects Maul because respect is a part of how he classifies friendship. Joe says he protected Maul throughout their entire friendship and Maul lived with him. Joe says Maul never broke bread with him. And like I said, these niggas known each other for a long time. Joe says Maul has a pattern on focusing on himself. Joe basically says fuck Rory and Rory doesn't really know him. Joe says Maul and Rory have never said what their problem is and that they only say that they want to see accounting. And I'm going to get into that later because that's the biggest gripe with everything that's going on. Joe says Rory wanted to own part of the podcast during the Spotify negotiations because they had a Spotify deal where the podcast was just exclusively to Spotify and they would put it on YouTube or get paid from the YouTube page. Joe said no to both but told Rory and Maul to build their own YouTube pages. To me, that's fair. Joe's YouTube page was active with his music. Then they started putting the podcast on Joe's YouTube page. I feel like that's fair. I feel like that's fair. What else? Joe says Rory and Maul made him lock into projections of the pod for them to keep showing. I'll get into all that shit later. I'm not going to read all this other shit. Joe says Rory and Maul were paid in the top 1% to 5% and shouldn't be looking for YouTube dollars. It was a whole bunch of shit Joe said on the episode. But then he was like, he called Rory measly. He called Rory a lot of fucked up names in the episode. Joe says he'll sue Rory and Maul if they start a podcast in the next year, but they can make one after their contract with Joe runs out without the help of Joe. Joe says YouTube money doesn't pay anything. That's if he said that. I don't remember him saying that, but if he's saying that, that's a lie. YouTube does fucking pay money.
Well, they made it harder.
Yeah, but niggas make money off YouTube. Niggas be making some guap off YouTube. Yeah. Rory and Maul, they did their own response. I'll play some of it here.
Both of them?
It was just both of them together.
Both of them?
Yeah. Had a talk before the...
Both of them?
We had a talk before the pandemic hit.
This is Maul.
About accounting again. And this was right after Cole passed away. And we were outside the studio. And he was the first, because now I'm seeing this narrative that we're auditing him.
Oh, yeah.
He was the first one that even brought auditing to the table.
And let me say this before I play the rest of this. Because academics were talking shit about them saying that they work for Joe. Maul and Rory said their contract with Joe is percentage based. So all the money that comes in for the podcast, they both get a percentage of that cut.
So they have to know.
Exactly.
Right.
So the accounting numbers that they're going to talk about is the number of all the money that the podcast is bringing in. How else are you going to know what your percentage is if you don't see all the money that's coming in for the podcast? They're saying Joe, every time they brought up for him to show the accounting, he wouldn't want to show the numbers. So I'll play the rest.
He said, y'all got accounting. We said, yeah, but that was wrong. There was a mistake on that.
And there was a $400,000 mistake on the accounting.
Where's the new one? And he was like, oh, y'all trying to pay me away, da da da. And I'm like, no, we just want the correct accounting. Oh, well then audit me then. And I'm like, audit you? I'm like, bro, fam, that's nasty. I'm not taking my niggas to court. Like, what the?
I forgot to say that too. One time when they finally did get the accounting, apparently the accounting company made a $400,000 mistake. $400,000.
It's a lot of credit.
So then when they finally asked Joe again, Maul just said they asked Joe and he was like, y'all got it. He said, no, that was wrong. We want the right numbers. And this nigga said, audit me then.
Like, that's just but again, looking back, everything makes sense now. Like, everything is starting to come together and paint a picture, because it's like, yo, why do you always get so hostile and so argumentative when we're trying to just get the business side right and focused and taken care of?
Which isn't even a large part of the business, honestly.
It's not.
There's so much more.
But it's like, fam, you got to remember, again, we're profit partners. We're a percentage-based, we have a percentage-based contract and agreement where we get a percentage off of everything that's coming in for the pod. So we have to see the money that's coming in. How else will we know what the fuck we getting? And then he had the nerve to say, one of the last conversations we had, he tells me, "Oh, you got a calculator, right?"
Yeah.
And this is for me. This is when
my story.
This is when, for me, I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to pull away from this in a minute, because I don't even know who this nigga is anymore, and I don't know who this nigga think he talking to.
So there's the other one.
Issue, but for me, it was like, you just talking to certain people, and everybody telling you like, yo, listen, I did business.
This is the most important part I want to play, based on the question that the person asked us. Oh damn, I lost it.
Like, you just talking to certain people, and everybody telling you like, yo, listen, I did business with him. Watch that nigga, man. I'm like, Joe ain't gonna do that to me. That's my nigga. He ain't doing that with me.
It honestly never even crossed my mind.
Never crossed my mind. But now when this is becoming argumentative and niggas are saying this and saying that, every time accounting comes up, I'm like, fam, why is it only an issue when accounting comes up?
The same way he said, why is it only a problem when money get brought in?
And again, my thing is, it's not about the money. It just became a point where the respect level just started to disappear, and you start talking to me like I work for you.
And my thing about all it's just so crazy to see that these niggas is fucking beefing over this shit when these niggas have known each other for so fucking long, dog. That shit is really wild to me, bro. And just as long as I was listening to that podcast, well, that's like 3 years I was listening to that shit. It's just so crazy that it's gotten to this point now. And I'll say in that response video, they did take a lot of onus to a lot of shit that they let fly under the rug. Rory and Mal, they was like, yeah, we did let a lot of shit go under the rug. Like, there was a lot of shit that we should have asked more questions about. But the whole thing is the accounting, which you agree with. You gotta see how much fucking money y'all niggas is making to know your percentage.
The whole thing, I think that they probably thinking that they boy could not do that kind of shit.
Yeah.
And ignoring the other, like, his past of what he's been doing and all that kind of shit. Even when you think about everyday struggle.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Even when you think about everyday struggle.
Somebody gave a quick summary of Rory and Mal's response. It says, Mal and Rory's compensation is tied to percentage of profits from the podcast, not a salary, not hourly. For all money coming into the podcast, Rory and Mal own a percentage. Let's call it 5% each. They didn't give an exact number. They've been wanting to see the profit revenues and what the expenses are to make sure their percentages are correct. Sounds like Joe has not been giving them these numbers for years, since around 2019, because Rory did say that. So it's been about 2 years since Joe has given them accounting numbers.
Probably their most exponential growth. Where he's talking about their deal with Spotify, and now their new shit here.
And he's been giving them the equivalent of the digital version of me writing some numbers on a piece of paper and saying, these are the numbers, versus giving the actual accounting numbers, which can easily be given, by the way, using a software called QuickBooks. Because they did say that he is given a piece of paper on a spreadsheet. They did say that.
Yeah.
After not getting the numbers for years, they finally get the numbers, and Rory's lawyer/accounting teams find a $400,000 mistake in the books. It's unclear whether that's $400,000 of profits or expenses. Either way, that $400,000 discrepancy affects the bottom line, which Rory and Mar are entitled to. After Joe's team, including his manager, acknowledged the $400,000 error, they agreed to give them the numbers, then never showed the numbers to Mal and Rory again. Joe told Mal, damn, that's easy, never mind. He told him to use a calculator and said if he wants to see the numbers to audit him. What else did somebody say? Yeah, I think that's pretty much it in a nutshell, bro. Mal also replies to the suggestion that he lived off of Joe from Joe's comments on the last pod, where Joe said Mal lived with me. He claims that Mal may have even had more money than Joe. Oh yeah, Mal was like, nigga, don't act like I was just a nigga on the fucking streets, nigga. I probably had more money than you at the time in my fucking pocket, nigga. He's like, don't act like I'm just some stranger that you... Mal was fucking upset, and if you watch this podcast, Mal never gets mad. He hardly ever gets fucking mad. And this may be the only time we talk about his podcast, because we don't ever talk about other podcasts, but it's just fucking... Somebody sent a question, so that's why we're talking about it. And He says Maul always says he hustled. He said he even hooked up Joe for a lot of performances and shows, verses to help Joe get some money when they were together.
Which when you think about it, is believable. We talking about Maul, Rockefeller. We talking about that.
Yeah, Maul is, for those that don't know, Maul is the brother of Biggs, who helped create Rockefeller with Jay-Z and Dame Dash. That's Maul's brother. I don't know if they're like brothers or half brothers, but that's his brother. Maul and Rory, the podcast right now, the Joe Budden podcast is sponsored by Patreon. So they get, I don't know how Patreon works all the way. I think it's like people give donations and
donate
shit.
To amount, whatever amount they.
Maul and Rory found out about the Patreon deal on air, so Joe didn't even tell them before he made the deal. Rory was also saying there's a lot of shit. There's a lot of times he would be talking about certain deals for the podcast, and he'll tell Joe, and then Joe will be like, "What the fuck you doing talking to these niggas about this podcast? What the fuck you doing?" And then later Joe would do the exact same deal that Rory was trying to tell him about. So it sounds like Joe just wants control of everything. Charlemagne told these niggas a long time ago, do not change the name to the Joe Budden podcast, and they did the shit anyway. I agree with the YouTube shit. Joe has seen Rory and Maul's response. He acknowledged it was a $400,000 mistake. He said, quote, in his response, "You don't have to call your brother a thief." Rory and Maul multiple times said, in their response, "We do not think Joe is stealing from us." They said that out their mouths. So I don't know what the fuck Joe was talking about. All in all, the most important thing.
Joe just looked too suspicious, bro. Not wanting to show. If there's no issue with the accounting and all that kind of stuff, and you get hostile every time they say something, because at the end of the day, you're in business together.
Right.
You're doing this stuff for profit. There should be no issue as long as everything's legitimate for you to show what's on the books. Because that's how they get paid.
All right.
If there was no shiesty shit going on. But clearly, and we could talk about this, like, you can really sit here and you consider this. Clearly, there's some shit that's going on.
That'll be the last 6 to 8 minutes that we talk about. So, what was the question? Get our opinions on the thing. The thing about this whole thing is, I feel like Maul feels like he's known Joe for so long, and then he even said it in response. He was like, niggas told him, "Watch that nigga, man. I've done business with that nigga." And Joe has a history of burning bridges. Slaughterhouse, I think Hot 97, fucking what else? Everyday Struggle. I don't know if it was all his fault or Complex's fault. This shit now with 2 of his closest friends. And Maul said, what he said? "Nah, that's my nigga. He ain't gonna do that to me." I think when it comes to starting stuff with your friends, me and this nigga right here, y'all, we lived together in 2 different apartments through 2016 and to 2018. Yeah, because we moved out the other one in 2018. When it came to bills, because it was just me and him in the first apartment in 2016, 2017, just me and him. We never had not one single situation happen where we was arguing about bill. Not one. Not even second apartment. Not the second apartment. The second apartment, it was somebody else that came along with us, and you know who you are. And I'm not talking shit when I say this, but I remember a day we went to look at the apartments, and I had a feeling like, and I'm only saying this to just paint a whole picture of what you like, of how you should look at certain friends too. I said to Brandon and him, in front of him, the other guy, I was like, "No, I don't think this is a good idea because this nigga don't care about nothing, because he's just different." And he came to the party on Saturday too. Shout out, and I love that nigga. That's my nigga. That's my guy. I've known him for years. We worked at KFC with him, fucking 2010. That's my guy. Yeah. But he's just so different to the point where I know he lives a different way to where it wouldn't work.
And I oversaw it, so.
And there was a couple times that we had problems with this guy.
Yeah,
and it's just real. It's a couple, and me and Brandon never had problems with the first apartment. But we never. But even with Jonathan, damn, I said his name. Even with Jonathan, that's my nigga. I love you, bro. That's my nigga. Because I know he be watching this shit. There was never a problem with bills with Jonathan.
Right.
There was never a problem with bills. But you got to take in personality differences. Me and this guy, we never had a problem. He's the only guy I could say I could start this podcast with because I know he's going to be consistent.
Yeah.
I know Ryan, because Ryan has said to me a couple times he wanted to be a part of the podcast too, but I feel like Ryan would never be as consistent as Brandon is. Yeah. And that's just fact. You have to kind of you have to be truthful with yourself.
Yeah.
And Maul has known that Joe has burnt bridges in the past. He has known that.
Yeah.
He's known that. So I'm not going to say it's all his fault. And he said that when Joe brought him on, it was just to kick it. on whatever episode was. It wasn't no permanent shit at the beginning, and they were looking to find another girl because they started the podcast with a girl. But then they were like, Maul was cool, so let's just bring him on. So that's how they brought it on. So you can't do business with everybody, dog. And there's certain situations that are going on with certain people that I've been hearing about recently. You can't do business with everybody. The thing, like with your friends, like you have to really have a certain trust. Like you have, if you've done business with your friend and money's been exchanged and you've never had a problem with this nigga, more times than not, you can start some shit. Like this nigga, there was no question. I know I could do a podcast with this nigga because he's gonna sit down, he's gonna do the shit.
And granted, you know, it's been like that. Still to this day, we don't have any money troubles. You know, we don't. Never. And I don't ever foresee it being like that, but there should be a red flag to where Maul was getting if he's burning bridges with other people. They all can't be lying to some degree. They all can't. And It just goes back to what he's saying that, and this reiterates the question. They specify that we're close. We are close. But at the end of the day, you got to be realistic when you differentiate business opportunity with friends, because you can't tell every single thing about business to everybody, because not everybody's going to be on a board. Not everybody's going to share your ambition to do certain things. So you got to be very selective per se on who you disclose certain things to and who you going about business, because everybody's not the same. That's not to say that you can't be cool with them. You can be cool. We got cool friends. We got people that'll be there for you, you know, and do all that kind of shit, you know, and be friends. Right. But when it comes to business, it's different. Money's involved, and no matter at any type of level, because you never know where things will be. When you think about money. Potentially, when we do this, we think about the bottom line and what it could be and what it will be. Right. So we consider that the people that we doing business with here now is going to be with us to that level on top. So if they're willing to fuck up some shit here down here, what makes you think they're going to be different up there?
Exactly. So, and I think it niggas that you known, because I've known Ryan for 15 years, you for 13, Jonathan about 12, 13, Anthony. I probably couldn't do business with Anthony either. And that's just me being real. That's just me being real, dog. Nigga, the point of what I'm saying is, niggas that you've known for years, be real with yourself, because you fucking know deep down niggas you could do business with. And it ain't just you can't just think of it like this. I know this nigga for 15 years, we could do that shit.
Can't do that.
It can't just be that simple. It's gotta be, I've known this nigga for 15 years. I've exchanged bread with this nigga to where he paid me back on time, where I owed him, he owed me some money, he paid me back on time. I gave him money, we both broke bread together. You have to go all the way down the list of their tendencies, their habits, the way they treat people, not even just you. Their family, their other friends, the way they talk about people. You have to take all that type of shit into consideration. It ain't just I've known this nigga for 15 years, we can do business together. And
it even goes further than those parameters. You got to see the people that they hang out with.
Exactly.
It goes into, and this is all going into this because they should have foreseen this coming, knowing Joe's qualities. Right. Just like we would have to foresee the people that we deal with as far as business by knowing their qualities and the people who they hang around with. So it's just kind of really that cut and dry. You know, you just can't do business with everybody. Everybody won't have that vision, that ambition, or certain things to go to where you want to be as far as that goes. Right. And once money starts coming involved, people, shit starts to look real different.
I think Maul, it's so hard to say because he said that he brought him in just to kick it and shit. Yeah. And if your boy telling you come on the podcast and then he just like, bro, you should stay on. 9 times out of 10, you're gonna be like, yeah, I'll do it. You know, this nigga's cool. So, cause the thing is, when the money started coming to play and the Spotify deal shit happened, you think Maul was gonna leave? He wasn't gonna do that. Cause now he can make some money off of just kicking and talking to his boy. So it's kind of hard to just say that Maul knew that this nigga Joe burned bridges and he should have left a long time ago because he brought him on some just kicking shit.
He probably didn't know.
That turned permanent, yeah. And then it got so big to the point where money started being involved and certain deals started getting put on the table. And what nigga is gonna turn down getting paid off of a podcast?
And we talking a lot about Maul, but Roy too. Roy, he's just seemed very like, it seemed like soft spoken. He don't like to speak up sometimes, man.
They didn't. And I'm gonna say they didn't talk down on Joe. They told. And Joe said a lot of the shit. He responded on that shit when he was like, "Don't steal from your brother," which was a lie. What they said, he said that he thought they were calling him a thief. They didn't say that. He did say they were telling the truth. A lot of the shit that they were saying out his mouth. And he said that my brothers have been asking for accounting. He did say that, so that shit is true. They did not talk down on this nigga in their response. It's like an hour and 10 minutes long. It's on YouTube.
As opposed to him where he did.
Yeah.
So.
It's just fucked up that it got to this point to me because I've been listening to this shit for a while. Yeah. And I actually saw their live podcast down. Me and Ryan went and saw that shit. So I seen the fucking podcast in fucking person. So it's just fucked up that it's got to this point, but that's business sometimes, bro. You just gotta really watch who you do shit with. It can't just be, oh, this nigga's cool, this nigga wanna do nothing. It can't, oh, I know this nigga for 15 years. You gotta really be, and like I said earlier, if you be honest with yourself, you fucking know. You know which of your friends you can do business with. You fucking know.
And as far as this question plays out, because they did specify, they see that we're close. As far as how our relationship goes, I don't foresee it happening and changing because what we do and what we think about business, we keep it between us. We do stuff and we always tell each other about what we're doing, no matter how little it may be. If I gotta order something, okay. If I gotta order cards or something like that, or he gotta do something, this is how much it costs. This is how much it is. If I gotta pay for something, if he gotta pay for something, this is how much it costs. This is what it is. We always know as far as where this goes. And it is not.
We gonna split it or it's gonna be, oh, I get it this time. Just get that other shit that you got. Yeah, you pay for that. It ain't never been no issues, bro. You owe me $100, bro. You ain't pay me. Fuck, it's been too much. It has, and I know this nigga since 2007.
Yeah.
And we live together in 2 different fucking apartments. None of that shit's ever been an issue.
It really it comes down to how strong you willing to do the shit. So how strong the relationship. If he addressed all that stuff with and he took a look at Joe's really his qualities, then you'd know. And just like it goes into play, like I don't foresee it. Just like the question was asking, I don't foresee it affecting us. To be real with you, yeah, we can sit here and say money changes people. I don't think that it's. I know it won't get to that level because just because of what we do as of right now.
Maul said that he was like, money changes niggas, and Rory's response was, no, it just makes you more of what you already are.
And that's a really good. That's what
he said. It makes you more of what you already are. He was like, it don't change people. It makes you more of what you already are.
Because all you could argue the point from Joe's perspective that, but it always seems that just Joe lacks that aspect of respect. Yeah. Common respect toward these two, especially to Rory.
Yeah, he talked to Rory a lot. Like Rory just some piss boy, and Rory spoke about that. He's like, this nigga was calling me words, and he was like, when Maul left, Maul was done. When that shit happened, when he told Rory not to come back, he said Maul was done, and Rory was the one. Rory was like, I was the one trying to bring the shit back, and Maul was like, yeah, that's true. And something, I think it might have been the Patreon shit where they're getting a percentage of it.
Yeah.
And one of them said that a lot of the niggas behind the scenes, I think there's one nigga, he does the timestamps, and then another nigga's recording shit, and then Parks is doing all the engineering. They said that them niggas was saying that they were underpaid and overworked. So Rory said, it might not have been the Patreon, it was some other shit. Rory said, I'm good with my money right now, to Joe's manager. Take the money I'm making for that and give it to them. And Maul was like, I did the same thing. Parks. He said Parks' name like 5 times. So Parks, and I think Maul might have said that to let Joe know that Parks is behind the scenes complaining. I think that's why he said that. Because Parks, man, he agrees with Joe with a lot of shit. And I don't know. A lot of people say he be dick riding Joe. It's just, I don't know, man. I agree with that. Not that he's dick riding, but he does agree with a lot of shit that Joe's saying. I just kind of felt that it was weird when Rory and Maul were last on there. He didn't say a lot of shit. But he said a lot of shit when they were gone on episodes to Joe. Like they were going when Joe fired that nigga, Parks had a lot to say. So I felt like that was kind of fake to me.
In a sense, going from a neutral perspective to like one-sided. Yeah, when you think about it.
So. Yeah. So yeah, it's fucked up that the shit's like that, man. It's really fucked up. But like I said, all in all, be careful, be smart, be honest with yourself. Be honest with yourself. That's the most important thing because you fucking know niggas you could do business with. It's just sad that the shit had to get in this way.
Yeah, I feel like don't give the benefit of doubt, man. You just gotta whoever that shit that Rory said, that shit is true.
Yeah,
it'll just only exemplify who they really are. Money, something.
Joe has a history of that shit. I think he's gonna regret that. Joe's gonna regret losing these two niggas.
Yeah.
And then Maul was like, he brought them other two niggas on to try to prove that he could do the shit without them. That's how he feels that he brought it. And all the niggas are cool. He was like, no disrespect to Ice and whatever the other nigga's name is, but I feel like he brought y'all on just to try to prove that he can do the shit without us. So
Granted.
It looks like Maul just posted some shit and it was like a fucking logo with him and Rory. So it looks like they may be trying to start their own shit. I'll definitely listen to it. I feel like they have a lot of fans.
Yeah.
That shit is on YouTube, their response. I don't think Joe and them, I think they record right now, actually. So that Joe might respond tomorrow. Joe and Parson might respond tomorrow. We probably won't keep talking about this shit because I'm not going to talk about another podcast. We never really talked about this podcast like this. Somebody asked a question. But yeah, man, just be careful, man. Be smart, be honest with yourself, bro.
Yep.
Socialjunkiepod@gmail.com if you have any questions. Again, thank you guys. Thank you everyone that sent the questions, man.
We are hitting the streets.
Yeah, this weekend. We back.
So send y'all questions.